Hey everyone, thanks for joining me this afternoon for live worship. We are going to do something a little bit different today. We talked on Sunday about worship a little bit and about, how worship is not just singing some songs on a Sunday morning. And so today we're going to do something a little bit different, a little bit this activity that I engage in sometimes. That's another way of worshiping. So, what I would love is for you to find a quiet space. At the end of this, it would be helpful if you had something to write some things down. So, a pen and a piece of paper. That could be a journal or just as simple as, whatever blank piece of paper and a pen. So, if you want to grab that. But we're going to do this thing today called Lectio Divina, which means divine reading. And what this is, it's just a way of reading through scripture in kind of a prayerful and meditative and contemplative way, and asking God to kind of speak to us through what we hear in his word. And so we're going to kind of do that together today. This is something that you can take and you can certainly do on your own. And I'll kind of walk through what those different steps are and how we do that. But we're going to do that together, spend just a few minutes doing that together today. So the way this is going to work and what we do is we're going to spend just a quiet minute kind of in prayer and preparing our hearts, just to kind of let some thoughts drift by and just to kind of prepare our minds and kind of still ourselves a little bit. And then we're going to read through a psalm 4 different times, and I'm going to read it out loud. When I do this on my own, I often read it out loud to myself, even just to hear the words and to hear the poetry of it. And I think oftentimes when we read something out loud, we hear it in a different way. And so that's kind of the goal. And if you just want to find a quiet space, I'm going to pray for us. And then as we go, there's going to be 4 different readings. And the first one is to read, and we just kind of listen for any words or phrases that stick out to us. And this doesn't have to be overcomplicated. We don't have to second guess ourselves. We don't have to get into an analytical mindset of why, but just to go, that's a word or phrase that stuck out to me. So God, what are you trying to say? And the second reading is to reflect, to listen again, and to maybe hone in on those words or phrases that felt meaningful or that stuck out to you in some way, and to start to really think about those things, process those pieces. When I do this on my own, sometimes I just read those words or phrases again over and over again, almost as like a meditation or a contemplative prayer. But we'll read the whole psalm again, and you can kind of focus on those words or phrases. And then the third reading, as I read, then it's time to respond to this is where we're going to write some things down, to start to think about and to ask God, what is it about that that you're trying to speak to me, or what action am I supposed to take based on those things that you're saying. And then the last reading is rest, just to be able to listen again and to kind of let those things, the ways that God is speaking, sort of wash over you. And so we're going to do this together as a practice. It's a great practice in solitude, but it's also a great practice. We did it a couple of weeks ago in our staff meeting together, and it was a really beautiful time. So today we're going to reflect on Psalm 46. And if it's helpful for you, or in some way you feel like it's valuable to read the words, you can certainly feel free to get out your phone or a Bible and follow along reading. Or if it's easier, you can certainly just listen along as I read. So I'm going to pray for us, and we're going to get rolling into this Lectio Divina process. So let me say a prayer, and then we'll just spend a minute in silence, and then I'll read through the first time. So God, we come and we quiet our minds and our hearts. We ask that you would allow us a moment of stillness, of rest, of peace in these few moments and minutes that we're going to spend together. Would you allow the cares and concerns and worries of our days and weeks to sort of just pass through in these moments? Would you give us a moment of quiet? Would Would you make us aware of the ways that you're speaking and leading us? Make us aware of the things that you're drawing us into in these moments. Thanks, God. And so we're just going to spend a moment in quiet, just kind of centering ourselves as we prepare, and then I'll read through this psalm the first time. So as I read Psalm 46 for the first time, the first reading is just about paying attention to some thoughts or some phrases, some words or phrases that stick out, or a word or a phrase that sticks out to you in this psalm. Psalm 46. God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam and the mountains quake with their surging. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy place where the Most High dwells. God is within her, she will not fall. God will help her at break of day. Nations are in uproar, kingdoms fall. He lifts his voice, the earth melts. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Come and see what the Lord has done, the desolations he has brought on the earth. He makes wars cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the shields with fire. He says, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress." And so we're just going to take a quiet moment to reflect on those words or phrases that stuck out. And so in this second reading, as we've had identified those words or phrases that have stuck out to us in some way, we're going to listen again, particularly to those specific words and phrases. And maybe as you do, just ask the Lord, what is it about these things that is drawing my attention right now? What are you speaking? What are you saying to me in these moments? And sometimes that's what we hear God speaking isn't actual words. Sometimes it's a feeling or it's a picture in our minds. And so feel free to pay attention to all of those things, and just to kind of hear or see or know or feel in your spirit what the Lord is speaking about those words and phrases as I read this a second time. Psalm 46. God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam and the mountains quake with their surging. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy place where the Most High dwells. God is within her, she will not fall. God will help her at break of day. Nations are in uproar, kingdoms fall. He lifts his voice, the earth melts. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Come and see what the Lord has done, the desolations he has brought on the earth. He makes wars cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the shields with fire. He says, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress." And so we're just going to spend another minute in quiet, asking the Lord, what are you speaking in those words or phrases? And with this third reading, we're going to take some time to respond as we've listened and as we've heard, and that response may be writing down what you've heard the Lord saying, or if there's a picture in your mind, drawing a sketch of that on a piece of paper to remember. If it's a feeling that you have, maybe it's recording that in some way. And so as you write those things down, this is a place also that we can return to. Part of the reason we respond and we write it down is that we get to come back to that place, come back to those words, come back to that picture to remember what the Lord is speaking. And I would maybe encourage you to do that on a piece of paper, but also maybe do that in the comments as you're watching this video as an encouragement to other people. Maybe something that you're hearing is for you and for somebody else, or would be encouraging or uplifting to somebody else. And so if you want, I would encourage you also to write those things down, certainly for yourself on a piece of paper, but maybe share them in the comments as well, so that we get to hear the connection to what God is saying to each of us. So as we listen again, you can start to write some of those things down. Psalm 46. God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam and the mountains quake with their surging. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy place where the Most High dwells. God is within her, she will not fall. God will help her at break of day. Nations are in uproar, kingdoms fall. He lifts his voice, the earth melts. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Come and see what the Lord has done, the desolations he has brought on the earth. He makes wars cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the shields with fire. He says, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress." So take a few minutes in this next quiet to write some of those things down, whether that's on a piece of paper, in a journal, in the comments, wherever that may be. And the last reading that we're going to do today, I'm going to read Psalm 46 again. And this last kind of reading, as I do this in my own practice, is rest. Just to read and to simply let it sort of wash over me again. to hear those words in a fresh way. Maybe that still is focusing in on those same words and phrases, or hearing some other piece of it, or simply sitting in kind of contemplation and letting these words wash over you. And one of the things that I often do in this last time is to read it in a different translation, just to hear the words in a different way, to hear them in a different rhythm, to hear them put in slightly different words can be helpful to hear things with fresh ears. And so I'm going to read Psalm 46 one more time, and this time I'm going to read it out of the Message, just to give us a different way of hearing these words. So this is Psalm 46 in the Message. God is a safe place to hide, ready to help when we need him. We stand fearless at the cliff edge of doom, courageous in sea storm and earthquake, before the rush and roar of oceans, the tremors that shift mountains. Jacob, wrestling God, fights for us. God of angel armies protects us. River fountains splash joy, cooling God's city, this sacred haunt of the Most High. God lives here, the streets are safe. God at your service from crack of dawn. Godless nations rant and rave, kings and kingdoms threaten, but earth does anything he says. Jacob, wrestling God, fights for us. God of angel armies protects us. Attention all, see the marvels of God. He plants flowers and trees all over the earth, bans war from pole to pole, breaks all the weapons across his knee. Step out of the traffic. Take a long, loving look at me, your high God, above politics, above everything. Jacob, wrestling God, fights for us. God of angel armies protects us. And so this practice of Lectio Divina is just another way that we worship, that we come in and find ourselves in calm and quiet in the presence of God, to place God at the center of our thoughts and our minds and our hearts and our spirits for a moment. And I've read Psalm 46 100 times in my life, and even now I come back to it in a new way in this season. As we read it that last time, there's this beauty that just says he plants flowers and trees all over the earth. And even just to be aware and to look around in this spring season at the new life that's sprouting up all around, and to go, God is present here in this moment. And then there's that line, we've heard so many times in our lives, maybe for some of us, or maybe it's new, that line of be still and know that I'm God. But to hear it in this way, step out of the traffic, take a long, loving look at me, just gives me new perspective to slow down, to take a breath. And even in the NIV, when we read it the first few times, there were these things that stuck out to me. It says, therefore we will not fear though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea. And I think there are so many things that feel like everything about our reality is shifting and changing right now. Everything about what we know to be true is shifting in a lot of ways for a lot of people. And there's grief, and there's unknown, and there's anxiety, and there's fear, and there's worry. But we get to stand knowing that God is our refuge and strength, that he is present with us in every moment, an ever-present help in trouble, that God is present with us and to us and in us in all of these moments. And so we can say these words, therefore we will not fear. And simply standing and proclaiming those words, to stand in my circumstances, to sit in my circumstances when I don't know what these various things are going to look like, where I have fear, I have worry, I have anxiety, to be able to stand in those places and to say, I am not going to fear, because God is with me and he is my fortress. And so this is another way that we worship that has nothing to do maybe with singing, and maybe it leads us into song, maybe it leads us into singing at another moment, but to be able to sit in quiet and have 5 or 10 or 20 minutes or an hour of just reading through scriptures in this way can give us fresh eyes and a fresh perspective. And I think half of it is just the ability to still ourselves and to have something to contemplate and meditate on that is a beautiful way to move us into worship. So, yeah, thank you again for joining me this afternoon. I hope that if this is a practice that you've engaged in many times in your life, or if this is something that's new to you, that this is a useful and beautiful practice for you to engage in worship, maybe in another way, in another setting, in a different way than you've done before. So, love you, friends. Thanks for joining me.